Hello and welcome, my friend. Some of the most important moments in your life don't feel magical when you're going through them. They don't feel like destiny. They feel like survival, and yet, somewhere in the middle of the chaos, you made a decision. Quietly. No audience. No applause. No certainty. Just you, alone, carrying the weight of it. It didn't feel powerful in the moment. It felt confusing. Maybe even wrong. You probably second-guessed yourself 100 times. Played it over in your mind, wondering if you should have chosen differently. But you still made that choice, and here's the thing, heaven noticed, this wasn't some big dramatic yes or a bold no that everyone could see. This was a quiet pivot. A moment when your soul was shaking, but you stayed true to the deeper pull anyway. It wasn't the kind of decision people write about in books, but it's the kind that gets recorded in the heavens. Because in that moment, you weren't just choosing what's next. You were changing your entire future. There's a difference between obedience and alignment. Obedience says, I'll follow the rules. Alignment says, I'll follow the whisper. Even if it costs me everything. And you did. You followed the whisper, even when it shattered your plans. Even when it didn't feel fair. Even when it meant walking away from what once felt like the answer. That choice, it wasn't for show. It was a signal. Not to people, but to something bigger. To God, to time, to destiny, and heaven responded, let me give you a picture to explain what I mean. Imagine a huge building being constructed. It's strong, beautiful, but one single beam, just one, is placed a few inches off. At first, it looks fine. But build up 20 stories, and now the whole structure leans. That one small misalignment grows into a major shift. That's what your decision fixed. It may have felt small in the moment, but it realigned everything, because when you realign, your entire destiny shifts to match that new center. People. Opportunities. Even delays, they weren't really delays. They were the blueprint being rewritten to fit your new alignment, and here's the wild part, most people don't even know what you did. They don't know the pressure you were under. They don't know what it cost you to walk away, to stay steady, to release what you thought was meant to stay, but heaven knew. And God didn't just see it, He marked it. Not as a test result, but as a timestamp. A line drawn in eternity where your name was written like a foundation stone. Ever wonder why things have felt off lately? Why doors are creaking open, or closing completely? Why people you used to feel safe around now feel different? It's not random. Your future is catching up to your choice. Your energy shifted, your spirit pivoted, and now your atmosphere is realigning, that old timeline. It doesn't exist anymore, you're in the middle of what feels like disruption, but it's not. It's reconstruction. Sacred, intentional, divine restructuring, and here's something most people won't say out loud, you weren't created to echo someone else's strength. You were made to model sacred courage, that's why God is raising you, not in flashy, viral ways, but in undeniable ways. You may not be the loudest. But your presence, it's powerful. People will feel it, even if they don't know what changed, and heaven. Heaven will whisper, they chose correctly, when no one told them what to choose. There are ripple effects already set in motion from that one choice. You haven't seen all of them yet, but trust this, your quiet obedience sent shockwaves into places your voice hasn't even touched, that moment that felt like survival. It was actually heaven saying, yes. Not loud, but definite. And what's coming next? It's not a prize. It's a response. There's something sacred about the person who chooses alignment with no confirmation. No spotlight. No external approval, you didn't need a prophecy. You didn't wait for a sign in the sky. You didn't stay just because it was familiar. You moved, even when it didn't make sense, that whisper in your soul. The one that wouldn't go away no matter how much you tried to ignore it. You followed it, and that is what made you different. See, most people wait until everything burns down before they shift. Most people don't change until their life falls apart, but you shifted before the fire. That's why heaven didn't just record your obedience. It responded to your timing. That's why this next elevation is unlike anything you've experienced before. Because it's not reactive. It's prophetic. People will think you're being promoted. But they won't see the real story, because this isn't promotion, this is revelation. God isn't lifting you up so you can finally be seen. He's lifting you up so others can see what it looks like when someone quietly chooses alignment, before the reward, before the platform, before the confirmation. He's not putting you on display. He's putting alignment on display, and guess what? You are now the role model. Not because you did everything right, but because you were faithful, even when no one knew what you were facing. Some people might be confused by your peace. They'll ask, why do you look so calm now? Why do you feel so grounded? So free? They won't understand the grief that came before this shift. They weren't there when you said no to what almost trapped you. They didn't see the moment your soul trembled, and you didn't flinch, and they're not supposed to. This wasn't a journey meant to be witnessed. It was meant to be confirmed, in the spirit first, and now. That quiet confirmation is bleeding into the physical world. Not in loud explosions, but in subtle, permanent shifts. The calls are returning. Rooms are adjusting to your presence. The people who need to know your name. They're starting to hear it, and the favor. The kind you thought had passed you by. It's being reinstated. Not because you forced it, but because you paused long enough to listen. That kind of maturity is the kind heaven can trust. Let's be real about something right now. This next chapter of your life, it's going to look nothing like the last one. And that's a good thing. You're not going back to rebuild what fell apart. You're not returning to old doors, asking for one more shot. That season is over. And deep down, you know it. Why? Because this isn't restoration. This is redirection. God isn't trying to fix what you lost. He's revealing why you had to lose it. That closed door. It wasn't rejection. It was protection. That detour. It wasn't random. It was rerouting. He's not inviting you to relive the pain. He's calling you to represent what's possible when someone chooses truth over comfort. That's the role you've stepped into now, not because you signed up for it, but because you embodied it. You didn't just talk about integrity. You walked it. When staying silent would have been easier, you chose truth. When staying small felt safer, you chose to rise. When cynicism was the norm, you chose clarity. That's why your life is shifting, not because you chased status, but because you chose alignment over applause. And now, without begging, without over-explaining, without trying to convince anyone, your life is becoming the evidence that God sees what happens in the dark, that heaven takes note when you choose the right path, even when it's the hard one, that timelines can bend around obedience. You didn't cave to the pressure, you didn't compromise for comfort, you didn't abandon your compass when everything felt uncertain, you kept believing. Even when the voices in your head were louder than any encouragement you could find. Even when the road ahead looked foggy, even when you had every reason to give up, you kept trusting. And now you're walking into the embodiment of what that trust built. There's a younger version of you, still healing, still wondering, still waiting for closure, and guess what? You're becoming the answer to their confusion. You're becoming the peace that version of you never got. You're becoming the breakthrough that past version of you didn't even know how to ask for. You're not just surviving anymore, you're becoming, and this new version of you. It didn't come from comfort. It came from clarity. It came from choosing what was right when it wasn't obvious. It came from saying no to what would have kept you stuck. It came from closing chapters that had no clean ending and walking forward anyway. There was no crowd cheering for that, no one clapped when you deleted that number, no one celebrated when you decided not to go back, no one noticed when you turned down that opportunity that looked good but felt wrong. But God noticed, and God didn't just acknowledge it, He felt it, and that's what shifted everything. So what happens now? Now you keep walking, but with a new posture, not like someone trying to prove something. But like someone who knows who they are, you don't have to hustle for worth anymore, you don't have to audition for rooms that weren't built with you in mind, you don't have to explain your path to people who were never meant to understand it. You move with confidence, not because everything is clear, but because you've learned how to trust without clarity. You let the confirmation come, without chasing it, you let the reward show up, without demanding it, you let God finish what obedience already put in motion, because from here on out, your life isn't just a journey, it's a reference point, a living example of what happens when someone listens early and moves anyway. You've become the kind of person that heaven can point to and say, that's what trust looks like. That's what maturity looks like. That's what alignment looks like. You're not following trends anymore. You're not copying someone else's journey. You are the template now, the blueprint others will look at when they wonder, is it really worth it to follow the whisper? And your life will say, yes. It is. That decision you made in silence, that moment when your hands were trembling, but you still said yes to the unknown, that wasn't just the right decision, it was revolutionary, it shifted everything. You didn't just turn the page, you changed the story, and now, the new timeline begins. The doors that are opening now, they're not the result of pressure. They're the result of positioning. You're walking into rooms that were always meant for you, but your character had to get there first. The invitations you're getting, they aren't random. They're right on time, because heaven doesn't operate on popularity. It operates on alignment, and now that you've realigned, everything that's meant for you is starting to find its way back. You don't have to chase it, you don't have to earn it, you just have to keep walking, because here's what's different about this season, you finally know your value, you're not second-guessing your worth anymore. You're not waiting for external proof. You're not living for validation that should have never been outsourced, you're moving like someone who's been through fire, but didn't lose their flame, someone who's been in the dark, but didn't lose their vision, someone who's been overlooked, but never forgotten, and now that inner knowing. That still, deep sense of I'm on the right path. That's your fuel. That's your compass. That's your confirmation. You don't need to shout it from the rooftops, you don't need to prove it to the ones who left. You don't even need to explain it to yourself anymore. You just need to live it, because that's how transformation works. Quiet. Steady. Unshakable. Your life isn't loud, but it's loudly impactful, and every step you take now echoes further than you realize. You are not who you used to be, and you're not going back, not because you can't, but because there's nothing left to go back to. That season served its purpose, it brought you here, to this moment, this new chapter. This sacred realignment, and what's unfolding now. It's not a redo. It's a reintroduction, to your purpose, to your voice, to your strength, to your calling, the version of you that's emerging, that's who heaven's been waiting on.